This is the story of two friends from college who came up with a crazy idea of inviting the greatest thinkers on earth to prove God in just 500 words. They didn't expect to get any responses, but they did. Ambassadors, senators, movie stars, captains of industry, scientists, media personalities, and more. They put 71-page essays in a book, which became a bestseller on Amazon, called Elevator Pitches for God.
Our father was very present when he was doing something, whatever it was, or talking to you. That's what he was doing.
There's a lot exceptional about him, but he really just made the choice day after day to be judicious and to stay open to working with people with different beliefs and to, think the best of people. One thing I will say is that he always, as when we were older, and had children, every Shabbat, and I think just when we had left the house, every Shabbat, he would bless all of the children and grandchildren sort of present or remotely and name where everyone was.
He knew where everyone was.
He knew where everyone was.
It was amazing.
So before my dad was sworn in as senator, a family in New Haven said, you should go to see the Rebbe. My older brother Matt and I were going up to the Rebbe, and I think he may have been blessed first and then was standing there, and the Rebbe said to me, sometimes a daughter can achieve more than a son. And immediately my Baba was like, he knew you were a feminist.
Here we are today with Elevator Pitches for God, interview podcast number 5. I'm so honored to have with us both of the late Senator Joseph Lieberman's daughters. We have, do you go by Becca or Rebecca?
Usually Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
And Hani.
It's not a relative of mine.
Okay. And Hani. And I just want to say we were so honored to have your dad in the book. He was so sweet. We had, I guess his secretary is Vernal. He called us back right away, and she said, the senator would like to talk to you guys. And he gets us, we get on the phone, and he goes, who are you guys? He was so sweet. He goes, who are you guys? He goes, and what are you guys doing? And so he wouldn't do anything until we told him who we are. We said, yeah, we're friends 40 years, went to UCLA together. We've been retired. He goes, wait a minute, you're retired? He said, how old are you guys? I said, we're like, 62. He goes, and you're retired? We go, yeah. He goes, so what do you do? He goes, well, we study, the sages, Torah, stuff like that, pretty much, all day. He goes, that's what you do?
Good gig.
He couldn't believe it. He goes, gosh, I'm 80. I'm still going to the office. He was absolutely adorable. And I wanted to say that Dennis Prager mentioned him after his passing, and he said he was the sweetest man he'd ever met. And he was. Everyone knew it. He has such a good vibe, such a great soul. And you're so lucky he was your dad. Come on. So to start things off, let me read a quick bio for you two. I know you didn't want me to do too much of this, but Rebecca is a lawyer by training. She works in the nonprofit sector. She has her entire career. She's in education, family well-being, civic engagement, voter mobilization. She's very active with her kids in schools and camps. She lives in her Westchester neighborhood with her husband and teenage daughters. Hani Lowenstein, you live in Israel, right?
Correct.
Where? Where in Israel?
In Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. Oh, I love it. I'm trying to make my way there, but I'm going slow, pacing myself. You work part-time for a Jewish organization. You have your husband, Daniel, and they're your children, and you're just the luckiest lady alive to live in Jerusalem, the center of the universe, right?
Yes, we're thankful.
Yes.
We're very thankful to live there.
Right. Yeah, I believe it's the center of the universe. I think pretty much everyone else all the other countries know it is too, because you see the Church of Sweden, you see everyone's there. What's going on in Jerusalem, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I picked up your mom's book, and I read it. Here it is. It was a great. Oops, let me move my finger. It was a great read, and it gave me real insight into your family. I had no idea, like you said, you're from. It was a family with kids. Joe had 2 kids, and your mom had a child, and then they both together had another one, Hani, who's with us. She's and one of the first things that struck me in the book was that your mom it was a tough time. She was a single woman with a kid. Ethan, you're right, your little brother, or like your big brother now. And,
Younger than me, older than her.
yeah, and it was tough. I mean, she really related how hard it was. And then the coming together of families is usually a disaster, I think, in most families. But what struck me is that she said, "I'm the mom of you all now. There's no step business." What did she call you? What did she say? She said, "Just call me mom, and you're all my kids now."
I mean, I've always called her Hadassah. What now that we have kids, we all call her Safta, or like my older brother Matthew and I call her Safta. It's a term, Poppy and Safta are the terms that we can all use easily for the two parents without.
Yeah, but she seemed to say this, and look, I know this is your family; it's probably tough to talk about, but she seemed to say that she wanted to take everybody under her wing, be the mom, and just clear up any sort of division. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I feel extremely lucky because I have, more than the regular number of parents. I got an extra parent in Hadassah. And I think that's like, whether it's mom or whatever we call those, Poppy and Safta throughout our lives, all of us kids have been really lucky to have super engaged parents and to have more than just two of them. Though Hani only has two, but in a weird way,
yeah.
I think you feel like you have more.
I know, it's actually funny because I remember saying to my parents when I was little, how come I don't have another set of parents that I go to visit, just like my siblings do?
You were shorted, right?
I felt like I was shorted, but thank God I actually do have a relationship both with my father's first wife Becca's mom and also my mother's first husband, Eitan's, Becca and Matt's mother, and Eitan's father. So, so it's funny because to me, the way that everything came together, I came in 5 years in, and by that
came in.
Yeah, by that time when I came
born,
by that time when I came into the family when I was born, it was, things were more settled and everything. And so I really did feel like I was missing out. But I did feel, like as one family unit, which was very important, which is unusual, I think. And as my mother wrote in the book, a lot of that came about because of, you have to learn when to say things and when to keep your mouth shut. And that's what my mother says, and now as a grandmother, one of the biggest lessons is to know when to keep your mouth shut. So
is that right?
That's a big lesson. Yeah.
Was there a particular time that she thinks it's wiser to keep your mouth shut, or?
Yes.
I mean, I do think like one of the reasons I think a lot of blended families have challenges is that you're dealing with, family units, members of the family who come from, another parent who may have different, even if they don't have different core values, the way they live is different. So it has to be, sometimes you do have to keep your mouth shut because, the kids are probably behaving in a way that you wouldn't, promote. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just not what you would try to instill in your kids. And yet it's the child of your spouse, and you love your spouse and you love the kid, and you need to just smile or have a glass of Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to filter yourself in terms of, there's a firewall as to what you, also if you're going to the other household, which you don't share. In other words, anyway, I just found out recently because I'm a product. I mean, I received this. I'm on my second marriage, and there's certain things I'm finding my kids don't share. I mean, we can write a best-selling book, and my ex-wife didn't know it, which we just found out, which was really interesting because it's been out for a while. But anyway, that's that's a really interesting. They didn't tell my ex-wife that. So it sounded like you said, there's enough challenges as there is in any family, and that you had this blended family, and yet she seemed to think, although it was a lot of work, that she did she did an okay job in bringing you guys all together. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, she cared enormously about it. She made it a priority, and obviously it was a priority for our dad too, that, this, united family. We are, he has an enormous amount of love to give. I mean, one of the things that's been most striking to me is the number of people since he passed away who have said like, oh, he was like a father to me. You know, I loved him. And I'm like, and the thing that's amazing about it is that it doesn't take away from the fact that he was actually a father to us. Like, because he just had so much love to give. And Hadassah also like is a very like deeply loving, caring person, and just values family really above anything, I would say. Like, it was one of her strongest values.
Yeah, it was amazing how people would come up to me on the street saying how sorry they were to hear that my father passed away, and I really felt like they were choking up. You know, they were really. It was. I think it's been very intense for both of us in that way, because it's been a personal mourning, but there's been a very strong level of like mourning amongst the community, also the larger Jewish community, the larger world, and people were so touched by my dad, both on a personal, by our father, both on a personal level and on a communal level, that it's like we're kind of, you know, you're like reliving it all the time, because everyone's coming up to you as if, like Becca said, it was like their relative, you know. And that's what also happens at the Shiva. It was like, you know, they really felt such a connection from the stories from the shul, from the stories from the, you know, from the government, from everywhere.
Yeah. Where did your dad get this love from? I mean, was it just natural? I mean, I know this is a tough question, but did he work on it?
No. I mean, it's 100% his nature. I would say both his sisters are also extremely like loving and connect deeply to people. And he grew up in a family like this. Our grandparents, Henry and Marcia Lieberman, who we called Baba and Pop, or call Baba and Pop, they, you know, Pop in a quiet way. He was less like the star of the show than our Baba, but was just deeply like present and caring. And Hani did not know him because she was named after him.
Yeah.
And Baba was just like a dynamo, a force, and also just full of caring for people. Like, I remember from her Shiva, like the people who would come, who felt this incredible connection to her, who had been supported by her. It was her house. Like, when we went there growing up for Shabbat, it would be like this constant flow of people all Shabbat afternoon. Like, you'd eventually get up from the table where you'd been slowly slicing away at that cake that was on the table, tiny piece at a time. Still somehow they have calories no matter how small you slice them. And then it would be like the fruit bowl would go out on the coffee table and a little plate of cookies, and then the door was open and people just started coming. So she had that quality too, really. And both of them have that sort of love, and they gave it to their kids, who have given, you know.
I feel like maybe also the old Baba, because Daddy would talk about her. Our Baba's mother was also like a very important part of our father's life, and that was also like a constant sense of support. And well, I feel like that was also more like Daddy can never do anything wrong type of situation.
So one of the, I think my mom would say this is like, so his ex-wife, like, he would come down the stairs in the morning and get applauded.
Did that actually happen?
You know, like, all he had to do was like wake up and appear, and he was adored. He was so he had incredibly loving parents and a lot of like positive reinforcement and adoration from his family.
Where's Hadassah's, your mom's parents really had a tough time, Holocaust survivors. And, you know, very different. And yet she really turned out okay too. I mean, with her background, it doesn't always happen that way, right?
Yeah, very different background. And that was also interesting between them, because my father was more of the American boy and my mother was more of like the immigrant, like the first generation. She was born in Europe, but, you know, grew up in America. And that was actually something that she connected with kind of with Baba, with my father's mother, that they were both, you know,
she was born here.
But Baba was born here. But there was something about, you know, that first generation of growing up in America.
Yeah. There's a stigma to it, a little bit, you know. There's but they're like the great all-American Mensch family. I mean, everyone. Your dad, he transcended politics. He wasn't, was he Democrat, Republican? All I know is he always chose what was right. And that's why we always loved him. It wasn't about party. It was like, he's just looking at what's right first, not what is, I wish they did that today, huh? Boy,
well, the good news is we can all do that, right? Like I've been thinking about this a lot because people have been saying, we need him now. And, obviously I need him now and always, right? Like I wish he were here. We miss him. I mean, that's not even the right word. But the truth is that, what he did, like there's a lot exceptional about him, but he really just made the choice day after day to be judicious and to stay open to working with people with different beliefs and to, think the best of people and, to be smart in all of these things. But we can all do that too. We can all choose to like take our time, take in all the information, try to work with people who think differently than us for the betterment of our society. So I think we need to be more like him.
Yeah.
That's and that we all can be in our own spheres of influence, whatever they are. And I try to be more like him even as a parent.
That's a good testimony to your dad, for sure. What would your dad say? Since you brought up the topic, I didn't want to bring up politics. What would your dad say today? I mean, what would he say about anything? I'm open to anything you want to say. What would he? Would he have any? I mean,
it's so funny because like throughout my teen years and after that, people would, when things were happening in the world, they'd say, "What does your dad think about this?" And honestly, we would almost never discuss these things. Yeah. He wanted to know what was happening in our lives. He wanted to have normal dinner table conversation. Now, he did share things, but it actually had been remarkable, like the stories that I've heard since he died. And, we had one round of this when he ran for vice president, where suddenly like all of these pieces of his history were made public, which he had never shared with us, about all of his accomplishments, really. And then, again, after his death, like all of these things that he accomplished were just, he didn't brag. He didn't make himself the center of things really at all.
And he also
go ahead, I'm sorry.
He quietly helped a lot of people. So in addition to like the large scale national, international accomplishments, he was quietly helping a lot of people, whether they were, a famous person or, the janitor in some building or, where he worked. He tried to help people in whatever way he could. And that really came out a lot also at the Shiva in a way that was really remarkable. And that's something, the way that he related to everyone, it didn't matter who they were, was like a remarkable part of his personality. That's also something I think that we can emulate in our own lives.
Wow. Yeah, just a real model guy. I mean, just a mensch. I mean, it just, what you're telling me is just amazing. What was it like being the kids in a public, being in the public sphere?
So
you're both smiling. For anyone who's listening to the podcast, doesn't have the video, they just smiled and looked at each other. Okay.
So it's funny because we grew up in like obviously different families, but also like we're 19 years apart in age. So our dad was elected to his first office in 1970. I was 1 year old. So like I sort of grew up with him getting promotions along the way, and he didn't get to the Senate until I was in college, and that was like a whole other level. And you sort of adjust to like, learning. You learn to gauge whether people are interested in you or in your dad. And I dated for 18 years. So I feel like I went on a lot of first dates with people who probably wanted to be dating my dad, or like, someone who was just like so into him. I'm like, I can't answer these questions, or they thought I would be someone else as a senator's daughter or Joe Lieberman's daughter. Like I'd be more religious or I'd be more something. And Hani actually grew up almost entirely in Washington and between Washington and Connecticut. So she had a very different experience.
Yeah. Although I really shied away from it. because when our father was selected as vice president, or the vice presidential candidate, so I was 12 years old. So I really just like did my own thing. Like I came on some things on the campaign trail and whatever it was, but the way that I stayed normal and sane was just to live my regular day-to-day life, which obviously had some interesting parts to it.
As best she could.
Yeah, as best I could. And I also had the same kind of like litmus test for people, like, why are you interested? Why are you talking to me?
Right.
And I'm
always wondering if it's just because your dad's a senator, right?
I'm generally a very friendly, nice person, but if I felt like the conversation was getting too focused on that, I got really good at shutting it down really fast.
Yeah.
So it was something I think that we were sensitive to. So on the one hand, we were extremely, extremely proud. We are extremely proud of all our father's accomplishments. On the other hand, it was something that we wanted and want to be our own individual people, not just the daughter of, but a lot of people have this in different contexts. If you're the daughter of the principal or the daughter of the rabbi or the daughter of, I don't know, whoever, or the daughter of whatever wealthy man or whatever, or right. Woman, whatever it is. So it was something to balance. And I think part of that was because, as Becca said, our individual connection to our father was so like personal and not around any part of his public life, that it was just kind of like, it was odd to us that people were focusing on it so much.
Yeah, it was definitely. But and also I would add this is that he really did not have expectations of us following in his footsteps, or, like he wanted us to, I think, do good things in the world. And however we chose to do that, he would be supportive of, but he wasn't like thinking dynastically in any way. Like he didn't have any expectations of us following in his footsteps, which was really a gift, I think. He really saw us as individuals, not as of course, parents always see children as an extension of themselves, but he really tried to see us for who we were. And the four of us are very different people, I would say. We have a very...
You told me that when I first emailed you. You were like, we're pretty, spread out in age. We don't have the same... It's like, okay, I get all this. Now, your dad, he had a special relationship with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, didn't he?
Yes.
Could you tell me what he said about him and what he told you? I mean, just anything on that.
So, yeah, I have we went to see the Rebbe before... So before my dad was sworn in as senator, a family in New Haven said, you should go to see the Rebbe. And they sent a limo for us. And of course, that being our family like this, what should have been a luxurious experience, being in a limousine became like a packed car with me and my brother and a cousin and my baba and It was like, suddenly it's like we're headed out of the shtetl. There should have been a chicken in there with us. And so we went to see the Rebbe, who had just recently come out of sitting Shiva for his wife.
Oh, interesting.
And there's amazing video of this. It's like shocking. Well, Hani's a baby, so she's like literally a baby.
Yeah.
And I feel like our dad is a baby. He's so young. He has an amazing head of hair.
Yeah.
And we all were blessed. And it became this point of contention in the family because my older brother Matt and I were going up to the Rebbe, and I think he may have been blessed first and then was standing there, and the Rebbe said to me, sometimes a daughter can achieve more than a son. And immediately my Baba was like, he knew you were a feminist. He saw it. He could see it. And then for years afterwards, my brother was like, that is not what he said. He said, sometimes a daughter can achieve like a son. And I'm like, that is not what he said. Like, this is my older brother by 18 months. I'm like, you have somehow shifted the narrative here, but it was me. But he really, I've looked I don't even remember what he said to our dad, though I've seen the videos, which are amazing. And, he was talking about how he was, like a Kiddush Hashem, and he gave our Baba extra Rebbe dollars because she should be like doubly blessed for having raised this person.
And I think he also said, don't come and visit. You should stay in Washington. You have a lot more important things to do than to come visit. It was something like that. But I think in terms of the Rebbe and the Rebbe's, teachings and his approach and his kind of like looking outwards and trying to bring people in, and and the positivity of the Chabad movement in terms of, like Daddy always loved to quote, like, it's not the mitzvahs that you're not doing, but like, what's the next mitzvah that you're going to do? And so that like forward thinking approach and that positive approach and step by step was something that really drew our father in.
Yeah.
And he would enjoy, he always had a picture of the Rebbe in whatever office he was in, including like his study at home. And
no kidding. So, you know how many people are happy right now? Right now, I mean, you're going to get smiles. Every Chabadniks are going to listen to this. Obviously, we have Chabad right across the street here.
Oh yeah,
right behind him. It was on the Zoom.
It was on the Zoom all the time. Whenever he was zooming from his office, his home office, the Rebbe was behind him.
And
he had a picture of the Rebbe. Isn't that fantastic?
And it was funny. It was, exactly. The picture right there.
Definitely like like that sort of like that idea of like the mitzvahs you are doing. Like our dad was like the ultimate glass half full person. Yeah. And also I think he was a huge admirer of the sort of entrepreneurial nature of the movement. Yeah. And of, again, like the deep caring, right? Yeah. Like just the deep caring that Chabad embodies, and brings out the light that Chabad brings out into the world in such deep and meaningful ways. So that always, and also I mean, like this was, I'm sure you've heard this, like on the campaign in 2000, he would sometimes, his mother, Baba, would sometimes know where he was going before he knew, because her Chabad friend in Stanford would tell her, because he knew, because the people there were providing the food for Shabbat, where he was traveling. So that network, that incredible, I mean, talk about social capital, it's beyond.
Yeah, I've given up. I'm like the last person to know. If I think I know something, everyone else already knows it. So I've just given up. It's like I'm in last place. I've just given up. So, is there anything else about the Rebbe you remember, or any other influences about him? Because that's just everyone is dying to know, of course. If you have anything about that, or okay, well, think about it. What was it like being your dad? Your dad was observant. Everyone knows he was observant in Washington. What was that like, being an observant person in Washington?
I mean, I was never an observant person in Washington. I think the thing is that
but Hani was. But Hani was.
You were
Well, I think, he stuck to what he believed in. He did what he believed in. He never made like a big deal out of it,
Ever, yeah.
He always did things quietly. There were Shabbatot that he would have to walk to the Capitol Shabbat day, or he'd come in Friday night, later. And some Shabbatot that he had to stay at the Capitol. That happened less frequently. He would usually walk back and forth, unless there was some reason he had to stay overnight. And so it was like part of his life that he never made a big deal of. He never complained about it. He was always, other people respected him for that. And so he just did it. He went ahead and he did it. And it was kind of something that he had taken upon himself more after his grandmother passed away. And then he stuck to that promise that he had made, that he wanted to continue that. And Shabbat was part of that.
Forgive me for interrupting, but how old was he at that time?
Oh, so that was in like 1967. Yeah. And so like as he was 25. Yeah. I guess that's right. Because, no, that's not right. About then. I'm trying to think.
Oh, okay. He was in his 20s.
He was in his 25, 20. Yeah. Because, my mom married him in this like very narrow window of time when he wasn't observant. It was like when he was in college, they met and then they married after law school, and he was still somewhat, but not as observant as he became. So it was like in this moment of time, he met her, they met each other, they fell in love, they got married. And then when his grandmother died and he committed to keeping Bar Mitzvot, like it was a whole change in their lifestyles.
Yeah. One thing that you might enjoy hearing is that, and he spoke about it a lot, and even recently in terms of the war in Israel and different projects to provide tefillin for soldiers, was that even when he was less observant, he always continued to put on tefillin every day.
Every day, yeah.
Every single day. Wherever he was, whatever he was doing, he always continued to do that. And I thought that was a powerful point because people, do different things. They don't do different things. But there can be that one thing that sticks with you, and it has an impact that way.
Well, and it keeps you attached.
Yeah, that keeps you connected and attached.
Yeah.
So that was that was a powerful message that he liked sharing with people. Also, people who had gone through different times or religiously or whatever it was.
I love hearing that. You just made my whole week. You put on tefillin every day. It's like, boy, that's fantastic.
And by the way, like that's some of my like earliest and most like sweet early memories. I can like just see him davening in the morning with his tefillin and his talit, like just
and so
doing it. And it was so reassuring actually to see as a kid. Like I was a little girl.
And Savta, meaning
Hadassah.
Her
mom.
She said that when he would daven, you would really feel like he was speaking to Hashem, to God. And she said, at first it was like, not like it freaked her out a little bit, but then she got used to it. So that was, he took his quiet time to daven in the morning and to daven in the afternoon and the evening, and always finding, always finding the time to do that no matter what was going on. And it was a very personal relationship for him. It wasn't manufactured. You have to remember he didn't grow up in a time when observant Judaism was popular in America, or there were a lot of day schools. In fact, he went to Hebrew school. He didn't go to day school. And so it was this was something that he got from his home and he stuck to it, but it wasn't something, and his shul, but it wasn't something manufactured in a certain way. And I think that's something wherever anyone is in terms of their Jewish identity or Jewish observance, that they can kind of take with them to make it something that's, something more personal, not just something that you picked up, along the way.
Like habitual.
Not something just habitual, something more personal, not something that was kind of figured out for you by someone else.
Fell into, right?
Yeah, something that you figured out for yourself.
He chose it. He really chose it.
What was Shabbos like in your home?
Yeah, I mean, we would have like fun, interesting, long Shabbat dinners. That's like when we'd have people over for dinner sometimes, but and then I mostly like focus on the Shabbat dinners. That was like the time when we were most together.
And then when we lived in DC, the Shabbat lunches, it was great. Savta would just invite, we davened, we prayed in Kesher, Israel, a congregation in Georgetown. And there are all sorts of interesting people that would show up there for Shabbos, or people would be there over the summer, or people who were students. And she would just, oftentimes she would just invite one or two of them that, they didn't really have a meal that Shabbat to come. Sometimes we had important people at the Shabbat meals, but that actually wasn't really mainly the focus. The focus was more just people from the show who were nice, good people, and they probably, would be happy to come for a meal. And so Shabbat was really great. I grew up in a neighborhood in New Haven and also in DC, but I'm speaking about DC, where there were very few Shomer Shabbat families. So Shabbat was not a time when we were hopping from house to house, from place to place. It wasn't like that. You had, I was very thankful to have one family up the block that had girls around my age who also kept Shabbat, but otherwise there were some, couples that had no young kids, and it was family time. It was personal time. It was, so in some ways I feel like, that Shabbat experience, there's something very special about it that you don't get. You get other things from being in a large community, but you don't always get that. Because oftentimes you're just all the social happenings and this and that and whatever it is, you kind of miss on that close, family time and the rest part of it.
Yeah, when I lived in DC, in one summer, working at a law firm, it would be like on Shabbat afternoons that we'd have like the longest conversations. The other thing I will say about both Poppy and Safta, our dad and Hadassah, is that they would never, they were always ready to have a conversation. So like for sure, Hadassah and I could stay up talking later, and our dad would get tired. Like I have visions of him sort of dozing off at the table, like at 10:30 or 11 at night, when Hadassah and I were still talking. But they would never, like they wanted to engage, and they treasured that. They treasured those conversations. They saw the importance of them, just of talking and listening, and telling you to marry a Jew.
I think also, and that's also in terms of imparting values to our children, and I think as everyone thinks about as parents, that you want to impart values to your children, and you don't want them to just pick up on whatever's going on the street or in their school, and to have a sense of identity of who they are and where they come from. And I think, those Shabbat experiences and those conversations and that kind of focused attention helps to build those types of stronger identities, I would hope. At least I think for me personally, it was very helpful that way.
I don't think they didn't take for granted that you would absorb whatever they wanted you to do or be from the ether. Like they really were intentional, as Hani was saying. Sometimes it became absurd, but generally, like, I sort of joke sometimes that every conversation I had in high school ended up with something about how you should marry a Jew. Like that was somehow in high school, every conversation, and I was dating nobody, like there was no, but across all different kinds of things, like they were very clear about, they lived their values, and they would talk about what they thought was important very openly. So we didn't have to try to, find it. We did not have to try to search it out. It was very, very clear.
Yeah.
Like I said in my eulogy, we know what, and we always did really know what our dad wanted from and for us.
You knew what he wanted. Okay. I had lost you for a second. The internet went off just briefly. Did your dad, just back to the Shabbos table, was there any particular thing he'd like to talk about, or he let you bring up the questions? Did he do anything special? Did he have any particular peculiarities that he did?
No.
As guys, we're always trying to get Shabbos tips for the table. Now, give us,
I know. So yeah, exactly. It wasn't a theatrical show or anything. No, it wasn't. No. It wasn't planned out. It wasn't. There wasn't.
Did he sing a song? Did he sing? No,
we would sing songs. We would sing Zmirot for sure.
Yeah.
And we would sing Zmirot. We would often talk about something the rabbi spoke about in shul. Mm-hmm. We'd have interesting.
Sometimes we have debates, conversations about what was happening in the world.
But but it was also like an adults table. It wasn't like
not a kids.
It was not a kids table. So you just had to manage with that. It wasn't
Also, there wasn't now there's options for what you're gonna eat. That's a different thing. No. There's the plain noodles because you don't like whatever. It was here's the food, and here's the conversation, and you join in. That's how it works.
Exactly. And that's why I'm not a picky eater.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm not. I mean, I have allergies, but I'm not a picky eater. Whatever. Exactly. So the one thing I will say is that he always, as when we were older, and had children every Shabbat. And I think just when we had left the house, like every Shabbat, he would bless all of the children and grandchildren sort of present or remotely and name where everyone was.
He knew where everyone was.
He knew where everyone was.
It was amazing. Every Shabbat. And he was
she's got a lot of kids.
He was but they're usually
they're all in one place, it's true.
But he was so excited, like when also the kids were together. One kid was visiting another kid.
Yeah.
But he literally every single Shabbat knew. He sent a satellite bracha.
Yeah, so it'd be everyone. Like to like Rebecca's in Jerusalem with Hani, or for a while, whatever. Someone's at Malay Gilboa, wherever it was. Yeah. He'd go through all of the grandchildren and children.
Yeah. And he would call them, or he would just.
He would call all of us, but he would like Shabbat, say he'd call everyone before Shabbat, but like at the table, he would, like when we were there, he would go around and give us all the blessing, like hands-on, and then he would, for anyone who wasn't there, he'd go through, say, I'm sending blessings to, and name them and where they were. So nice. It's like how many people?
It's a lot of people. I mean, I guess it's close to
6, 9, 13.
13 grandchildren.
Yeah, 13 grandchildren, and then all the children.
Would you say the entire blessing for each one, or you just say, this blessing is, I'm going to give such and such a blessing, who's in wherever, and that's what he would say?
Yeah. If he weren't there, he wouldn't re-say.
Yeah, he wouldn't go through the whole.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't re-say that. That
he'd still be there.
Yeah. No, but he knew what was amazing. He knew where everyone was, and he was
and he had talked to all of the kids. He always talked to everyone before Shabbat. Friday, yeah, of course.
You call everybody. Good. Yeah. What else? Well, what else do you guys? Look, he was definitely one of the most admired guys, I think, in the entire world. I mean, if you think of everyone today, particularly they're controversial, I don't think there's a controversial thread on your dad's.
Oh my God, he's extremely controversial.
No. Yeah,
I think maybe not for you or a lot of people. He inspired great hatred in
well, look, you're always going to have a percentage of people they don't like themselves when they wake up in the morning. They don't. But as uncontroversial as you can be, that was that guy. And your mom's book was absolutely wonderful. What else do you want to tell me? Any other stories? People would love. I'm sure they're very interested. I'm interested in hearing anything else that you guys kind of remember that really personify him, or are fun that people might find it interesting, or.
Well, it's I don't know. Well, no, I'm trying to think. When I think about him a lot as a father, and something that he very much, I think, took from his parents was, and in some ways it connects back to this idea that he was davening with tefillin every day. And then back again to the sort of Chabad idea of like, you count the mitzvot they do, not the ones that they don't do. His door was always open. Like, among the, whatever, kids grow up, everyone goes their own ways at different times and comes back together. And he was able to, as I said, like, make clear what he wanted, but to always like love and accept you no matter where you were and what you were doing. So like, I dated for many years. I had different boyfriends. I broke up. Blah, 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 blah. He wasn't, to me at least, pulling out his hair. I mean, I know he wanted me to get married, and when I did get married, he was quite relieved, and he, loved my husband. But it's just that way in which he managed to be both sort of morally upright and true to his values, and also be accepting, I think is like an amazing model.
Did he push you to be observant, or? Did he say, you need to really, like, if you weren't Shomer Shabbos, did he say, you really need to be Shomer Shabbos? No. You never did?
I mean, I knew that he would be happy if I were Shomer Shabbos, but it didn't happen. And he also, like, would see, like, that's when, like, he saw, like, the good in my life and in the way that I live my Judaism. And he valued that. I think, he wasn't judgmental about it. would he have been happy if I kept Shabbat? Probably. But I think he was able to, see and appreciate me and the life that I built with my husband. And, so.
Yeah. Another point that I would make, which we kind of mentioned earlier, is that our father was very present when he was doing something, whatever it was, or talking to you. That's what he was doing. He wasn't frazzled. It wasn't like his brain was in a million places. Yeah. He was very focused and present in whatever he did. And so maybe it sounds trite, but it kind of like elevated these like small acts. I think this is going to sound even more trite, but he, in our home in Jerusalem, he loved taking out the garbage. And in fact, when we came back to Jerusalem after we had been in the States for the Shiva and afterwards, and for Passover, which was afterwards, we saw the cleaning lady came, and she said she was so upset. And she said, I just told everyone how he would always say to me, don't take my job. Don't take out the garbage. I want to be the one to take out the garbage. And you have to understand, where we live in Israel, the garbage doesn't go to your, the garbage can right outside your home. You have to walk up the street a little bit to do it.
Stairs,
yeah, it's like a whole do. But he loved that. So everything he did, and even that he did with a sense of joy. So there's a sense of purpose and joy in in every part of the day.
And in every part of the day. Like, he really took pleasure in small things, which is not something many people do, and it's certainly not something that many enormously accomplished people do, who have seen and done things and achieved things that we can't even dream of.
Yes, and I think there's a memorial at the Begin Center in Israel where I mentioned this, but he also didn't let like small things bother him, which was part of the whole, being grateful for everything he had and taking pleasure in the small things, is that he didn't get stuck. The little things that could ruin someone else's day, it's just whatever. He didn't let it bother him, which is something I really would like to do more. And I think something all of us can do.
Yeah, he was really like, brush it aside, move on.
But in terms of, parenting and everything, or grandparenting these days, there's so much going on. And I know it's been spoken about too much in terms of technology and everything else. But just the ability to be present and focused on what we're doing and on our kids, and actually have a conversation with them, both when, both sides have eye contact and everything else. It's a huge thing these days. And he was the master at that. And that's why people felt so connected with him. And we heard this from so many people in the community, from people that met him once or twice, that he was just really there and only focused on you.
This was one of the things. So as I was growing up, our dad was in local politics, so he was running all the time and he was out a lot. Now, my mother felt he was never home. I felt like he was always there. And it was because of this quality. I mean, whether he was always there or not, it was like I had Shabbat with him. If he was helping me on a paper, he was always like, very focused. Exactly what Hani was saying, that like presence and focus were exceptional. They were really exceptional.
I would characterize both of your parents as grown-ups. And today we can use grown-ups. And I'm still trying to grow up myself. So that's why I'm loving all your answers. I'm loving hearing his tips and everything. Well, I was told that my podcasts run too long, but I didn't want to stop you guys from talking because this is all fantastic.
You can edit this. You can cut things out.
I know, but it's all just so precious, and I might just let it go. But listen, I want to thank you guys. I know we took a while to get this together. I'm so happy you came on.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. Sorry, it's been
no problem. I'm not doing anything else.
It's been a busy time, and also, I mean, I think we're both like struck by the ways, or I'll just speak for myself. Like, it's been a busy time, and our feelings of loss, like, sort of come in waves. And there's this beautiful memorial that No Labels did in DC a couple of weeks ago, which was like wonderful. But it's also another moment of like pulling it all back up. So like, as much as we clearly love to talk about our dad and we love him so much, sometimes it's hard to like dive in because it's so, and because he's not here, because that hurts.
Unbelievably, it's
Yeah.
it's completely unbelievable.
Well, I'd like to invite everyone to read his essay. We gave our authors 1 page, 500 words exactly, to prove God, and he was one of the sweetest guys that said, "Sure, I'll do it." This is
So
our
great.
commercial. My dear friend from 40 years ago, UCLA, Bruce Licht and I wrote this. Well, we didn't write it. We were the crazy guys that decided to invite everybody. If you don't have your coffee table edition, this is a great thing for Friday night Shabbos dinners.
Yeah.
You can pick up an essay, right? Pick up an essay, read it, share it with everyone. And for friends, great gifts, by the way. For people who are struggling with it, that's why we put this together. So I'm really indebted to him for doing that, and I'm indebted to you guys for coming on, because this has been, for me, just a great conversation. And I hope we can talk again perhaps in the future.